Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We are live-ish on YouTube right now. Happy Memorial Day to everyone. We have a very, very special show here, Sam. Zac Robinson joining us. We finally get one of our former colleagues that's coaching in the NFL to join us and talk some ball.
Yeah, excited. First time to have Zac back on since he was part of the show, part of this feed.
He was
part of a different feed.
He was on a feed that we were on. He was on the show.
Legacy
we call it
feed.
The show, right? Yeah, exactly. The Big Time Throwcast, which we'll talk about. Anyway, excited to have Zac. Happy Memorial Day, as I said, to everyone. It's all brought to you by our friends over at SKIMS. I had heard of SKIMS before, but not their men's underwear. Had not heard of that before, but now I have, and it's all worth the hype. That's right. Underwear never fits right. Hard to find something comfortable, but not SKIMS. Comfortable, practical. The waistband isn't too tight. Love it. SKIMS offers two types of boxer briefs for men. I've tried both, the cotton and the stretch. The cotton designed for day-to-day use. The stretch built for athletic performance. They're both great. I love the cotton a tick better. So that's my go-to now, my SKIMS cotton boxer brief, Sam.
Yeah, huge fan of the cotton boxer briefs. Boxer briefs are definitely what I go for generally, and these ones are awesome. Like, they are by far the best set of underwear I currently own.
So fully endorsed here on Check the Mic. You can shop SKIMS Men at skims.com and SKIMS stores. You got to let them know that we sent you, though. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey, select our show, check the mic in the drop-down menu, and then make sure that we get the credit. That's important. We're a family here, so let's all make sure we get credit. Under podcast, check the mic. SKIMS is the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, USA Basketball, and Check the Mic.
And us.
All right, man. Let's get to Zac and talk with Zac Robinson, Falcons offensive coordinator. All right, we are finally officially joined by Falcons offensive coordinator Zac Robinson. Welcome back to the show, Zac. It's still the same show. You were a co-host on this thing way back in the day.
It's been a long time. No, good to finally connect with you guys, some former colleagues. So it's good to see you guys. I know we always talk, multiple times throughout the year, but good to connect. Glad this worked out.
Well, I'm glad somebody finally joined us on the show. Bobby never gave us the time of day.
He's big timing you?
Yeah. He was big timing us, but I'm glad you're here. We're happy. We're not here to take shots at Bobby. So, how's everything going? What's going on this time of year right now? What are you working on?
Yeah, it's been good. The guys got back in the building a few weeks ago, so it's like it's installs. The installs start stacking up. It's a ton of meeting time. We have not officially started OTAs, so it's just like we're in phase 2 mode to where we can get on the grass with them for like an hour. It's routes on air, it's plays on air. So it's a lot of, teaching, installing. It is nice being in like year 2 of the system now. Cause you go into year 1 of the system, especially a big overhaul. You got, new faces, you got new coaches, new scheme. Like I look back at, a year ago last year, I'm like, how did you even you're just treading water trying to get through it. So at least year 2 of the system, there's some familiarity. We've got a ton of guys coming back, which is nice. Really not adding that many new pieces except for a couple a draft pick and then a few free agents. But yeah, no, it's been good. I know the guys are chomping at the bit. Like there's only so much that they can take of me standing up in a meeting room installing at this point. They just want to get out and play actual football. So we'll get out there next week, which will be a lot of fun to just kind of see where everybody's at. But no, it's a fun time of the year because you kind of got your core, your identity, the stuff that you're going to have, and then it's also the evolvement of the offense. And you watch whether it's around the league or you look at yourself and see things that you can kind of tweak and adjust going forward. Obviously, we got a new quarterback with Penix, so it's a lot of fun to try to piece this whole thing together. But it's a good time of the year, pretty laid back, but it is fun to obviously just get back into football.
What are you looking forward to this year in terms of what the offense can do with Michael Penix at quarterback? Because we were kind of speculating last year how much the offense needed to accommodate what Kirk Cousins is at this point in his career. And now you got Michael Penix, younger, more athletic, bigger arm. Like he just puts so much more on the table. How excited are you to kind of unleash all of that?
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Obviously, you guys have seen Mike from when he was at Indiana and Washington, and then the 3-game sample that he had last year. There's not a throw that he doesn't have on the field. He can touch every part of the field with, touch, pace, accuracy. He's got pretty much everything everything that you're looking for. And then from an instinct standpoint, a vision standpoint, he can see things well. So, and then, like you said, Sam, the athleticism part is something that he didn't use a ton in college, but it's in there. I mean, he ran a 4.4 at the Washington Pro Day, and then even some of his GPS numbers as those guys are just working out. I mean, his speed is on par with some of our top receivers. So that's definitely an element that we're looking to explore. Obviously, some of the play action passing game and some of the movement stuff that he can do, really to just open up every part of the field. And so I know it'll be a lot of emphasis on that this offseason. And once we finally hit the ground in training camp, is just getting some of those things going just to play to his strengths. And, we'll have a bunch of different, variations of play action like it'll just kind of keep evolving as we go. But definitely excited to see Mike, in a full year with the system. And then also just with the, getting more reps with the skill guys. Last year he went and played, and I mean, he might have thrown one or two of these routes ever to Mooney. And then it's like, all right, hey, go out there in the game and rep this live. And they actually, to his credit and to the guys' credit, they did a great job executing those last few games. So, no, we're excited. Everybody's excited. He's got such a great way about him. Super smart, very cerebral, sees the game like a coach. And so, all those things combined, man, we're definitely pumped to see Mike at the switch and skill guys, offensive line, everybody loves them, team loves them. So it'll be a lot of fun.
I know you guys loved him because you picked him 8th overall after signing Kirk Cousins. So how quickly did that come about? The love for Penix, and like how soon did you know, hey, he's legitimately in the mix at 8, even though we just signed Kirk Cousins last year?
Yeah, I mean, we went through the whole process of the free agent market, obviously, and then you're watching the college guys as well. And Mike was a guy that I watched a lot of college football like you guys on Saturday. You watch a ton of college football and you see these, especially you're trying to find who's the next quarterback. So I remember watching him at Indiana, some of those games when he obviously got Indiana in the top 10 in the country, and you're watching who's this young lefty that can sling it all over the place, and he's moving around pretty well. And then obviously when you watched him at Washington, it seemed like every Saturday when we would have, a little bit of time off before, whether we were traveling or had a home game, like Washington was playing. So you got to see exposed to him a lot, just watching college football on Saturday. And then fast forward to this process. And obviously now you're diving into the tape and you're seeing what he's seeing, not just from a TV copy standpoint, but from an all 22 lens. And, we went about the process. Obviously we signed Kirk, felt great about that. And then, we kind of gave our 2 cents on what we thought on the quarterbacks and made the selection at 8. But we felt very strongly about Mike early on in the process. Obviously never know how things can fall with the draft, and could he have been picked, 6th, the Giants, like whatever those scenarios are. We just knew we had for him. And, to be able to stay at 8 and pick a quarterback that you feel good about was obviously unique. But, you never want to pass up those possible franchise guys. And when you have the commitment from the whole building to do that, obviously it makes it a lot bigger deal. So, but yeah, it was, we've watched Mike for a long time, and every time you throw a Washington game on when he was at college, man, he was a ton of fun to watch.
Did you guys have a sense of where the rest of the league was on Michael Penix? Because one of it shocked everybody when you guys made the pick. The first part of it is obviously you just signed Kirk Cousins, but I think the second part of it was when you look at those kind of consensus draft boards, he was seen as this fringe first rounder, early second round guy. It's obviously you guys were way higher on him than that. It sounds like the rest of the league kind of was as well. Did you have a sense of where other teams were on Michael Penix?
To be honest, not really. Like, I went radio silent on every single person that I know on other teams. Like, didn't say I never talked about anybody with quarterbacks or anything. So I didn't know how other teams viewed the whole class. And so to see it all shake out how it did on draft day, and then you always, like you're saying, Sam, you hear after the fact. So it was like, as soon as we made the pick, it was like, oh man, we loved Mike. And so you don't know if they loved him actually, before that, or just because you picked him at 8 and now it's a little bit higher than everybody anticipated. But it did seem like after the fact, just talking to buddies around the league, once you caught up on how people saw that quarterback class, that there was a lot of for him. And obviously we felt fortunate that he was, sitting there at 8 because you never know how these things can fall.
Well, that's 2 straight years. I'm saying the Falcons have given us 2 of the best case studies in just draft history, right? Drafting Penix when you have the Kirk Cousins investment this year, the 2 edge rushers in the first round, both Jalon Walker and James Pearce, 2 guys that are, top 5 edge rushers on a lot of draft boards. An aggressive building that you're in there, Zach. What'd you think of this year's draft, bringing in the 2 edge rushers in the first round?
No, it was cool. It was cool to see the defensive guys go through the process. And, obviously there was a lot of really talented players to choose from. And so I know everybody's fired up to get both these guys in the building. They've been around, obviously just got here a couple weeks ago with rookie camp. And so there's a lot of excitement, on that side of the ball for us as offense as well, just to see the type of impact that all these defensive guys can make. So, no, I'm pumped to see them. It's going to be obviously different going against them in practice and having to try to block them once you get the pads on in training camp. I'm sure there'll be some frustrations trying to figure out how we can block these guys on the edge. But it'll be a good challenge for our offensive line. We'll all get better with all these guys that we added. So, there's a lot of excitement for both those guys as well as the rest of the defensive guys that we filled out in later rounds.
It's your second year officially as offensive coordinator now, but what does that process look like coming over from the Rams when you're installing a new offense? Is this like, hey, I'm bringing in your head? Is it mostly what McVay did, and it's or did you have this constructed in your head? How does your system, your style evolve through the years?
Yeah, it's always interesting. Like you start sitting down and you're like, all right, what do you really want it to look like? Like you have your install sheets from what we had in LA. And obviously that is my background, the core beliefs of that, the foundation of that offense. Like that will never leave. Just because of the respect I obviously had for Sean even before when I was working with you guys. Like we were always talking about what the Rams were doing, whether it was the 2018 season. And then obviously it worked out and got extremely lucky to get in there and work with Sean and the rest of the guys there for 5 years straight. So that'll always be the core kind of identity and philosophy behind it. And then once you start, obviously everything is predicated on your personnel. So you start getting your personnel in here, and then we were able to sign a few different free agents with Charlie Warner, with Darnell Mooney, guys that have a different skill set than maybe some of the other guys we had in LA. So then you start piecing it together with your personnel. Obviously, we knew we had Drake. We knew we had Bijan. We knew we had Kyle. We knew we had a great offensive line that can do a lot of different things. So, percentage-wise from what we put in from LA to Atlanta last year was like, it would be hard to put a percent on it. It was probably, north of 80-something%. But then once that's in, that's when the real kind of, tweaking and evolving starts happening once you realize what your players can do well, because everybody's not obviously in a square peg and a round hole. So we were trying to figure that out. There's a lot of, discussions that we have to have as coaches. Is this really, I know we had this in LA, is this really fit what we have here, or this is something completely new? But I thought the run game, tying it together with Coach Ledford and obviously keeping the philosophy of the wide zone was a big deal here. Obviously, we don't want to lose sight of that just because of the guys have a ton of banked reps. Our offensive line is built for that. So that was something that, coming into it was different from where we were in LA in terms of running, true wide zone. And so there was a lot of tweaking, a lot of involvement, and then you get throughout the season, and again, there's more tweaking, more evolving, and then now you fast forward a year later, and things can look a lot different just based on you being around your personnel for a full calendar year now, and being around the coaches, understanding what we're all kind of how we all see this thing collectively. So it's offense as you get like ever evolving, and it is just. There's always a different way to look at something. You got to be open-minded. You got to look around the league. Hey, what are the Niners doing? What are some of these other good offenses or guys that you have respect for? So now full calendar year in, still have obviously the core identity of our Rams, stuff from a handful of years ago, but it's definitely going to keep evolving.
I have a couple nerdy X's and O's questions here, Zach. As a play caller, how much when you get in there on Sunday, how much of it is the preparation going in? Like I have an idea of the plays I'm going to call in various situations, and how much is being adjusted on the fly? How would you describe that process for our viewers?
I mean, that's a tough one because there's some that it just goes like exactly like you think, or I would say it's more feel than anything, but there's a preparation element to know, hey, I want to try to call this at this time, or hey, here's our favorite play passes. How are we going to sequence these plays in order to set this up or set up a run with a play pass, vice versa. So, man, to put a percentage on like what that is so hard, but I did find in the first year doing it that, your preparation kind of leads you to have a little bit of feel for when those moments occur. And, but yeah, it's some days the hardest part is when you leave Sunday and you're like, man, we never got this off the sheet. And that was one of the plays that we wanted to get to. That's the most frustrating part on my end is knowing that maybe a play didn't get called that you were hoping to get to and the situation didn't come up, whatever it might be. But, yeah, a lot of preparation that goes into it, and then a lot of feel, just based on how the flow of the game's going, that you might go into it thinking, hey, we'd love to call, 8 play action passes. Well, that's not working there. Now we're calling 8 quick games instead, so there's just so much adjusting on the fly based on how the flow of the game's going that, you're learning and I'm learning. I'm watching other, play callers, see how they handle different situations as well. Cause that's really what it's all about. Just keep evolving as with your thoughts on those but it can be, it can be a challenge in terms of like what that exact balance and try to be prepared, but also let the game kind of come to you and see how it flows from there.
What about the balance between player match or calling plays versus players, right? So are you trying to beat the defensive scheme, or how much are you saying, hey, we've got Drake against this particular corner, we're going to feed him in a certain way? How do you balance those
good.
two?
Yeah, I think like first and second down is, sometimes it's more scheme heavy, but it's also it's always players driven. Players are always going to drive it, but you kind of know first and second down, typically here's what you're getting. Here's our top 3 or 4 coverages. Here's our top pressures. Here's our top this. And then obviously the third downs, the situational football, like that's definitely predicated on the players, the matchups, all the things that you can get. But players will always take the cake on that. And then obviously it's just depending on the situation. Like I said, third downs, as you guys know, hey, you try to get the ball to the best player out there, and different situations, red zone, all those things that come up. But yeah, it's a good balance to find. But I mean, players over plays is what it's all about. We can, design up whatever we call, but if you don't have the guys to do it, it's not going to work. Same thing. You could have the dumbest play ever called and you've got a great player and he makes a great play for you and you look like a genius. And it's like, that play actually sucked.
I need an example of that. When did that happen? When did you make a terrible play call and a player bailed you out? Like Bijan just broke 17 tackles.
Oh yeah. There was probably, whether it's in the run game and you got a free hitter or we're mis-ID'd or something and he makes that first guy miss and it's an explosive run for 18 yards and you're saying, oh man, what a great play. It's like,
nailed it.
Great job, buddy. The same thing in the pass game. There could be something that's wired and, whether it's a quarterback scrambling, making an off schedule play, or just, 2 guys making a play connecting in tight coverage. Those situations happen very often to everybody. It's football. It's an imperfect game. And that's why you got to have the guys to do it.
So I notice when people put up the kind of career resumes of you and Bobby, they tend to leave out the PFF part. It just doesn't make the highlights for some reason. What did you take from, because it's not the usual coaching route, right? What did you take from your time at PFF that you think is still relevant with what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think that those years were invaluable in terms of just the amount of football that you're exposed to, the access that you had to, quickly watch whatever film you wanted with PFF Ultimate. We use that every single day here. That is still at the forefront of like everything that, to make a cut up, hey, go to PFF, boom, boom, boom. And then you got the cut up around the league, whatever you're looking for. So that access to film was definitely big time just because you're exposed to so much and conversations that, us 3 would have, we were watching so much, football around the league. That definitely sparks some thinking. And then looking at it through a data perspective and what you can take from the data side to football side and how much balance you can have between that. I was talking to somebody earlier today just about like, all right, hey, it's 2nd down and 7+, and you're looking at, hey, what's the best way to handle those situations? I know the old school way, oh, hey, let's just get this thing into 3rd and manageable. And I can remember us three even having conversations like, well, it's actually better to have 2 downs to throw. Analytically, it says that's your best chance of achieving a 1st down. And so that's still in the back of my mind. Obviously, you're not going to just drop back every single time on 2nd and 7+, but knowing that, some of those things that you can use to your advantage, obviously going for it on 4th down. I can remember, back in the day in the office, it was like, man, more teams should be aggressive going on 4th down. Obviously, the theme of the league has been that way, and we were very aggressive last year going for it on 4th down as well, and we had some really good success doing it. So some of those things are still in the back of my mind from those days in 2016, 17, when these things were just starting to come up. And now obviously everybody's kind of caught up to that frame of thinking throughout the game. And just two examples of the PFF time and when those things were really valuable. You never know when it's going to come up, but that definitely has been on the back of my mind on a handful of occasions.
How does that kind of decision making work with like 4th downs and stuff? How much of it is your decision as the play caller, and how much of it is head coach saying, no, here's when we go, here's when we don't?
Yeah, I can only speak for us. We've had, game management, Tim Burbannick and then Raheem, they're communicating. We're all three communicating, but Raheem's making the call. He's our head coach, and he's going to make the call in those situations. I'll just have to be ready for it at any time. And, we've got obviously our box of plays that we like for some of those critical downs that we're pulling from, but yeah, you're kind of you're on the ready for it. And obviously we love the aggressiveness, putting the ball in the offense's hands to try to achieve a 1st down. But yeah, Raheem's he's got a great feel for it too. Obviously you can use the analytics and numbers, but there is a feel element to it. How's the flow of the game? How's the defense playing? All those different situations that arise. But we always love the aggressiveness that Ra has on those downs.
I thought you guys won a couple games, or at least put yourself in position to win a couple games because of those 4th down decisions. At least once or twice, did you guys run hurry up from 3rd down into 4th down? It looked like you guys were very prepared and ready to go for it.
We did. Yeah, we actually there was a few times when Ross, hey, go. Like, hey, let's tempo these guys. They're not set. Having a handful of times, touchdown against Tampa, Dallas. We did it. Like, there was a number of occasions we ended up tempoing in those downs, and it was beneficial because, like you said, our guys those are typically your staple concepts. Guys have good understanding of it, and it's execution over maybe some sort of scheme. So, yeah, those situations did come up probably more than I was anticipating going into the year, but it ended up, being a big deal in some of those games.
We won't bring up the Kansas City 4th and 1 run though. That did. We were trying to break that down the next day, and Nick Bolton just made a great play, right? Is that what happened?
Yes, exactly. We'll leave it at that.
All right, it's time. I just want to refresh your memory, Zach. I want to see if you remember something here. I want to see if you remember. You could still chuck it. This was a few years ago, the day that Mike Renner ran his 40, and you made one of the best throws I've ever seen. I was on the receiving end. Sam and I on the outside.
You have the video of this? Are you going to splice in the video?
I think if Will
it's
could
good.
pull up
You
the
should
video.
see it.
Oh! I remember
that throw.
was so upset. He's like, what do you want me to, like, what more can I do? That might be best throw I've ever made, Steve, honestly. I'm glad you hauled it in.
Two separate things annoyed me about that play. Number one, it was like an absolute dime. If you were making those every week, you'd still be playing in the NFL, not coaching in it. And number two is that Steve put the hands up. Like you talk about late hands. His hands were so early that I spent like 10 seconds trying to swat at the ball, and then eventually it arrived right in his hands.
You're just upset that you underestimated my speed in jeans, and I stacked you and got on top and said, I gave Zach a nice target.
There was a lot of teach tape on that one clip. How not to play DB, how not to throw early hands. But
great throw, though.
Results over the process on that one.
Weren't you like the top camp arm for the Rams a couple years ago with all the turnover you had on the roster?
I did throw. We had two quarterbacks, basically for the whole this was the 2023 year. So we had Rippon, and then we had Stafford, and then Stafford was on a little bit of a pitch count. And so I found myself thrown in there, throwing routes on air every day. And like, you know, I would like to say that I still have it, but it's easy throwing routes on air when there's not bodies flying at you. But yeah, I had to be called on unexpectedly throughout that season to throw some routes on air here and there.
Between the teach tape of the route and the throw and the teach tape of Renner learning how to run a 40, there was a lot of things learned that day.
That was a special day. And I'm glad you didn't have to deal with like TJ Ward running around hitting people.
That's a little too soon.
We're not going to pull that video up.
YouTube that should be assault in today's age.
YouTube would be now.
TJ Ward and Zac Robinson. It is one of the craziest. Didn't you bounce right up too? You're like, whatever, I got it.
I did pop up and just felt an immediate zinger from the bottom of my back all the way up to the neck. Probably should have came out, but we kept playing, and it was the bowl game, so it was like you're not gonna, it takes a lot to come out of a game in general, but especially the bowl game. And but yeah, that hit was I still have nightmares, I think.
Last thing I got here, when you and I did our weekly QB show, and it was kind of like all on the same feed, and you and I would do our own show, and Sam was with Renner at the time, and we called it the Big Time Throwcast. And I've debated with Sam. I think that's a great name for a show. Yeah, it's a great name, isn't it?
Well, I think that was very creative. I had nothing to do with the name of it. It was all Steve.
It was me.
You can tell.
But the theme of quarterbacks for the PFF scale was big time throws. And so if you're a hater on that, I got nothing for you, Sam. I don't get it.
Great name. It was a great name.
I mean, evidently, you know some things, Zach. You're an NFL offensive coordinator, but you don't know that one. That's crazy.
Well, Zach, we appreciate the time. Obviously, good luck with everything, and we'll continue. Hopefully, we'll get you again here, either when you guys are, winning playoff games or whatever it might be. We'll get you back on here. But no, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining.
No, for sure. Good to catch up, fellas. And yeah, if we can get back on, shoot, for winning playoff games, that'd be a good thing. So good catching up with you guys. Appreciate you guys for having me on.
All right, Sam, it was great to have Zach on the show here and, ask some nerdy X's and O's questions, see me take you deep and him throw an absolute 50-yard dime. That was fun.
Yeah, it was. That part less fun, but the whole thing was fun. Zach's an awesome guy. It's good to catch up and awesome to see him doing as well as he is. I mean, he's, offense coordinator now on a team that looks like it's going places, on an offense that looks like it's going places. And he's one of those names that's swirling every year in terms of future head coach. And I mean, since Sean McVay kind of identified him as a coach to grab hold of and to bring under his wing, Zach's been talked about as a future head coach in waiting, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Yeah, he went from, I can't remember, he was wide receivers coach and QB coach, both, I believe, with the Rams, right, on his way up, and then got the OC job. And, it's interesting. I've always wanted to ask those types of questions, too, because I think for fans, that's kind of like the deep dive behind the curtain, so to speak, about what goes into play calling, because I think some people think you're just, picking plays out of nowhere in the middle of a game, and they don't realize all the preparation that goes in. And then other times there's so much preparation that goes in, but it's like, well, what if none of that happens, right? So I'm always interested in that balance, right? Like what goes into that and what makes a good play caller, right? We talk about feel and adjustments. What makes Kyle Shanahan different than others, and how has he been able to sustain his success through the years? There's an art form to the whole play calling thing, and I think Zach was able to talk a little bit about that and what that looks like on a Sunday.
Yeah, not just that, but the way he articulated kind of, I guess, his philosophy, you would describe it as, was really not encouraging. It sounded smart, right? Like that's the way you should think about things, instead of, I have a system and we're going to install the system and the system works, and then we got to find players for the system. And like, he's not thinking like that. He's thinking like there's 2 or 3 things that I view as like core beliefs, right? Like this is a good fundamental way of approaching football. And then everything else is movable. Like everything else, we adapt and we do the best we can with the pieces we've got. And, we move it to accommodate this player and we, get players to, but it's not as rigid as a system and like this. And I think that kind of typifies Kyle Shanahan as well. Of all like the Shanahan disciples, he's been the guy that's consistently evolved as the most year on year on year. Mr. Wide Zone is suddenly incorporating like gap and man and power run concepts into his offense. You're like, well, that nobody does that. That's not a Shanahan thing, but he's doing it. So I think that's a really smart kind of way of articulating that he's not like rigidly married to any system. He's got a couple of philosophical like North Stars, and then everything else is like changing.
Yeah, I didn't ask him specifically, but he kind of answered it about last year, how much wide zone they ran. And we brought that up on the show here too. It was as outside zone or wide zone heavy as any team in the NFL. And his answer, if you missed it, that's what they were doing, right? That was what Arthur Smith did. And he brought back 5 starters on the offensive line who were built for that system. So that's pretty much what they ran. So that's an example of him adjusting to what they did. I'm curious this year to see how that changes and how much they mix it up.
I heard it articulated really well recently in a podcast talking about something else on a podcast called Second Captains. You know what the difference is between an algorithm and a heuristic?
What is it?
So an algorithm is like a very set kind of sequence of things to teach you how to do something, right? So he described it as, imagine a guy climbing like a rock face, right? And it's sort of planning your route up the cliff face. And here's how we're going to climb. We're going to do right hand here, left hand here. And we're going to go up bit by bit by bit. And the whole thing is kind of mapped out from the bottom. A heuristic is just go up. Like if you keep going up, you'll hit the top eventually, right? It's just, that's the way, right? And you figure out the pathway as you go. That's kind of, I think the heuristic is the better way of constructing an offense, or even just it's the better way of approaching NFL football instead of having this rigid algorithm. And if somebody figures out something to break a step, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
We just go north, right? Head towards the success. Just score points. That's the good way of doing this.
The offensive heuristic is the way we're going to describe the system from now on. No, that was good. That was fun. I think be able to give people some insight into what goes on a Sunday from a play calling standpoint, from a game planning standpoint. It was good to get a little bit into that, and hopefully we could do more in the future.
I'm just ripping off other podcast ideas now, but I
else?
listen to a different podcast where the show finishes every time, and then they give you 5 minutes of bonus content, and that always starts by the guest saying, what was something that you didn't get a chance to talk about that you would have liked to say? So like, if we weren't dealing with the constraints of, him having to tell the truth, what would you have liked to ask Zach, on off the record that you could get a truthful answer to?
What would I have? I mean, I would like to get like the real nitty gritty of the conversations as far as Penix and Cousins last year, the real nitty gritty. Because
I would love to know. Yeah.
You and I try to have the same types of conversations that happen in the room, right? Which is why we're not just sitting here spewing hot takes. We're over there saying, consider this option. We'll consider that option. So think about in every room before a decision's made, they consider both options. So one of the options is, guys, we just signed Kirk Cousins. I don't care how much you like Michael Penix. That's crazy because we have the 8th overall pick. No one's ever done this. We need a pass rusher. Like somewhere along the line that was probably brought up and discussed, even though they took the complete opposite decision, right? So if we could get into the nitty gritty of like how intense were those discussions, how many people pushed back against it, how do you get buy-in? If we could get into some of those truths, I don't think we were able to, that would be fascinating to me.
Well, there's three separate discussions almost around Cousins last year. There's that one, right? The sort of the actual debate of, wow, we love this guy, Michael Penix. Like we really love him. We love him to the tune of the 8th overall pick, but we've just signed Kirk Cousins. Can we actually do this? There's that conversation. Then there's the one during the season when Kirk Cousins is playing his way to the bench. And it's like, we still love Michael Penix. Theoretically, he's supposed to take over in like a year or two's time, but actually we might need to make this happen now. And when we pull this pin, there's no going back. Like, that's a conversation as well. Can we bench Kirk Cousins because of exactly what's happening right now? You're kind of stuck with him, right? You can't really get rid of him and you can't go back. So can we do this at all? Can we actually sit him down eventually? Obviously, they ended up doing it. That's a second discussion. And then the third discussion I would really like to know about is, when did they realize Kirk Cousins wasn't really the guy they signed? Like, when did they realize, hey, we just gave this dude $100 and whatever it was $1 million, and he can't really move. And because not only can he not really move, he can't really throw either in certain areas.
Let's not forget, it started poorly. Then he had that 500-yard game on Thursday Night Football, and they turned it around. So it wasn't like it was all awful, but it was more of a roller coaster ride, right? I mean, it was more of like, okay, for an Achilles survivor, he's going to get better as the year goes on, as he gets further away from the surgery. But it didn't go that way, right? It was like down. He started awful, got better, started throwing the ball to the defense against the Chargers, and it was like, okay, maybe it's over here.
Like I don't want to. Every time you sort of talk about Kirk Cousins, people bring up that 500-yard game. Like, obviously, Kirk Cousins, number one, for his career, he's been a very good NFL quarterback. Number two, clearly there are games where he's still going to be able to turn it on and have an impressive performance. But I think what we saw, number one, the overall level was not great. It was not where you needed it to be. And number two, from very early on, you saw the offense needed to fundamentally change. Like, they needed to adapt to Kirk Cousins in order to make it function at all. So again, it's like very quickly you would have been like, coming out of those first 2 weeks, the media and everybody was like, man, Kirk Cousins is toast. This is awful. This is an abysmal. It's an embarrassment. They got to bench him. That wasn't going to happen. But some conversations were happening, right? It wasn't. I don't think Zach's in there after week 1 and 2 saying, man, this guy stinks. I want to play the rookie. No. Like, let me do that. But I do think he's coming in saying, wow, there's a whole bunch of stuff we need to take out of this playbook because Kirk can't run them right now. And
if you were, again, tuning your ear to what he was talking, when he was talking about Michael Penix and running a 4-4 in the movement, that's not just, I don't think it means they're going to run 12 zone reads per game. That's movement passes. That's getting him out of the pocket. And I like the way Zach described it, because when we articulate what does a good offense look like, attacking every blade of grass, attacking every part of the field, that's how Zach was describing that. You felt that. Didn't you feel that watching Penix last year? Like, Drake London was catching passes at points on the field that he had not been exploring for most of the season with Cousins. Then you get the boot action. You get all these different things that the defense has to account for. I think that's what they're getting into this year with Michael Penix taking over.
There is something to simply opening up everything as a threat, right? And that's why I've been sort of so big on that this offseason, about what the potential of what that offense will look like with Zach at the helm and Michael Penix as the quarterback, because it can work for a while, running a very limited, very specific type of offense. But the narrower your scope of attack is, the easier it is for a defense to key on it and to shut it down and to force you into something that you're not good at. And we've seen that, for teams that only target shallow stuff, right? They have no real deep threat. Sooner or later, teams figure that out and they squat on everything. And all of a sudden, everything you're trying to do that you were really effective at beforehand, it loses its edge when you don't have the ability to back off the defense. When you can't scare them away from the stuff you're really efficient at, you stop becoming efficient at it.
Well, I enjoy having those conversations. We have hopefully one coming up in a few weeks here with a former general manager, so not on the coaching side, but on the GM side. So tap into some of the team building stuff that we love. How's that for a tease, right? So I'm not giving away too much there, Sam, in case things fall through. Yeah. As always, appreciate our viewers, listeners. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. And 9 o'clock Mondays. Are we going to do 9 o'clock on Thursdays now, Sam?
Do it. Let's declare it now.
9 o'clock this Thursday. So
we are now a 9 a.m. Eastern show.
Killing my sleep-in patterns here, but that's cool. 9 a.m. Eastern. Get some consistency, see how this goes through the offseason, and if it continues into the season. I have one more thing. I don't know if I should bring it up or not, but should I bring up my recent failure here?
Well, yeah. Okay. I was not to dump on you further, but for a second there, I was like, what possible failure could you be talking about? I was wondering what other failures you had in your life.
Well, I know we should have done this at the top when more people are watching, but
Breaking news.
This is breaking news. I did have my first general manager interview.
You did?
Like I did not get the job. I got a proper general manager interview with Michigan State University, and they have gone in a different direction, which is fine. But it was a good process. I appreciate the opportunity. We had great conversation, and I wish them all the best in the future. How's that? How's that?
Did you get an official reason? Like, here's why you're not general manager material?
I am general manager material.
Oh, okay.
They liked my presentation, certainly unique, very, compared to the other candidates, I believe. But there were, other people had proper connections to the top. So I'm trying to do a little coach speak here as well.
Yeah. Did I negatively affect your case by this by letting known my disgust for their uniforms?
It didn't come up, but you could tell that probably held that against me. They're like, everything's great except your podcast partner made fun of our uniform, so we can't bring you in.
To be fair, only the specific, like the alternate one. The regular ones are fine.
The rest are great.
Yeah. It's just those alternate ones are literally some of the worst uniforms I've ever seen in any sport ever.
So those that don't know, different landscape in college. There's a salary cap coming up starting July 1st, paying players more officially. That's now going through the school rather than just through collective. So there's a whole change, and a lot of teams are building NFL-like front offices. So it was a good opportunity. And, the feedback that I got, I had a good plan, well-articulated plan. It just wasn't the right time, Sam. So no. If you're a college school looking for a GM, I'm exploring. By the way, part of my pitch was that we would not end the show, right? We would have to maintain the show in parallel. And so that's a huge part of if and when that opportunity arises at the college level in particular, we got to keep the show going.
Think of the peek behind the curtain that would be.
I know, right? I would just have to sit there like, hey, we just lost by 30. I don't want to talk about it. Just move on. We'll just talk NFL.
You'd be, I don't know. I haven't actually listened to Doug Gottlieb's show since he's been like running Green Bay or whatever he's doing. I don't know how much he says about that, but like you would be terrible at that. You would tell us nothing. We would get less out of you than like a random media savvy, polished general manager going on like random hostile radio shows in the local area.
But I can't. Why would I talk about it? We're an NFL show. There's no conflict of interest. We'd get to draft season. I would talk up all my players as the next big thing. That's how it's going to go. That's it. So I figured I'd announce that. I'll hang the Michigan State GM finalist banner. Maybe we'll tweet that out as a joke and everything. And
you should definitely get one made up and put over your shoulder there.
It's going on the resume. It's going on the resume. Which, by the way, that was my first ever interview. I'm 43 years old. Played
for any job.
For any job in my life.
Wow.
Like I had you don't interview for the golf, whatever a job I had when I was 16, cleaning golf clubs. Didn't have to interview for that. I guess my interviews were when scouts came to watch me pitch. I usually sucked at those too, but I never really had an interview. PFF was, do you need help? They said yes. Hired me on the spot, pretty much. Never needed a job. So I never really needed a resume, never needed to do an interview.
I mean, I was sort of reacting in shock and horror. And yet thinking back, the last interview, I've actually had a few interviews in my life, but the last one would have been rugby coaching part-time in Willow Park in Dublin. Then it's like internships over a summer, which I didn't get. And like a bar job. Like I never interviewed for PFF. I just did Neil was like, do you want to come do games? I'm like, sure.
The interview process was easy for Neil. So it was a different experience, but it was fun. It was good. I think my podcast experience helped. It was just a Zoom interview. I wasn't on, some people in the building wanted me on campus for the follow-up. It just didn't happen. Just didn't happen this time, but grateful for the opportunity.
you missed out on the ability to, to intimidate them with your size.
I would have certainly gotten the job if we had an in-person. Yes. Next time, I will insist that we don't do Zoom. We'll do it in person.
This has to be in person for no particular reason. And then as soon as you get there, just loom over them.
And, all my interactions on this show with you, the fake billionaire, certainly helped as well. I knew how to answer those questions. So anyway, we figured we'd break that news here and have some fun with it. But all right, that's it for us today. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Happy Memorial Day. And we'll see you again on Thursday at 9 a.m. New start time Thursday.